Next on Unsolved Mysteries, a Las Vegas millionaire is found dead by his girlfriend. Was it an overdose or murder? A huge explosion takes the lives of 6 Kansas City firemen.
106.
See how your tips help solve this case. After a young couple mysteriously disappears, a human skeleton is found in their backyard. And a fender bender and an argument turns to road rage and then to murder. I'm Dennis Farina, and this is Unsolved Mysteries. Las Vegas, Nevada. They say what happens here stays here. But not when showgirls, drugs, and a possible murder are involved. That gets everybody talking.
I need somebody to help me.
It's 4 p.m., and former model and dancer Sandy Murphy is calling 911.
He's just not breathing. I don't know.
But it was too late. Her boyfriend, Ted Binion, was dead. Binion was a multi-millionaire. He was also a frequent heroin user, and it looked like he OD'd. Was it an accident, suicide, or murder? When they discovered that Binion might have been dead for as long as 9 hours before Sandy Murphy called 911, police began to wonder. Ted Binion was the flamboyant co-owner of the Las Vegas casino that bore his family name, Binion's Horseshoe.
In its heyday, Binion's Horseshoe was unlike any other casino in Las Vegas. It was literally the place you went when you wanted to place that sky's the limit wager. Ted was a part owner of Binion's Horseshoe at a time when it was the most successful casino in Las Vegas. He liked the atmosphere. He really had passion for that job.
But times have changed in Las Vegas. Casinos turned corporate, and Ted Binion's wild ways, they got him into trouble with the Nevada State Gaming Commission.
Number one, he had the heroin problem. He also liked to hang out at adult nightclubs. He used to pal around with wise guys. And you just don't do that in Las Vegas these days and expect to keep your license.
6 months before his death, the Gaming Commission revoked Binion's license, and Binion was forced to sell a share of the Horseshoe to his sister. He was shut out of the place he loved most, the world where he belonged. But was that the cause for suicide?
Everybody I have spoken to has indicated Ted loved life and wanted to continue living and had all kinds of other goals that he wanted to pursue in life.
Perhaps the overdose was an accident. Toxicology reports revealed heroin and the prescription drug Xanax. But according to some, it was a very unlikely combination for Ted Binion.
Ted only took Xanax to get himself off of heroin. He would not have taken both at the same time. And then we find out through the coroner that there was a large amount of heroin in the contents of his stomach. That's curious again because Ted was known to smoke heroin, not ingest it.
At the time of his death, Ted was living with his girlfriend, Sandy Murphy. She was a woman half his age. They'd been together for about 3 years. When they met, she was 23, and she was working as an exotic dancer.
They really had a stormy relationship. It was kind of a love-hate relationship over the years. They were always fighting off and on. And yet, there were times when he would say he loved her, and then there were times when he couldn't stand her and wanted her out of the house.
At 9 in the morning on the day Ted Binion died, Sandy Murphy reportedly called their housekeeper with an odd request.
Listen, I don't think we're gonna need you to come in today.
Oh, I know. But Ted, he's just not feeling real well, and things are crazy, so we're not going to need you to come in.
Later,
Is Ted there?
about noon, Barbara Brown, Ted's friend and real estate agent, tried to reach Ted by phone. She says that Sandy told her that he was very ill, even vomiting.
I was really surprised with this. I said, well, do you want me to come over and help you? And she said, oh, God, no, don't come over here. He doesn't want anyone to see him. He's lost so much weight lately. And I said, well, that's strange. I talk to him every night, and we have an appointment tomorrow at 1. She clearly did not want me over there, and the call really distressed me.
Barbara Brown says that she called back twice that afternoon, at 2 and again at 3:40, but there was no answer.
And then I got the call from a friend of mine who said, Barbara, have you heard the news? Ted is dead.
Shortly before he died, Ted Binion allegedly had some suspicions about his girlfriend, Sandy.
The first thing that we learned was that he called a private investigator in Las Vegas, someone who had done work for him previously, and asked the investigator to follow Sandy around town. The implication was that he thought she was cheating on him.
The man that Ted Binion reportedly suspected was one of his own business associates, Rick Tabish. According to Las Vegas newspapers, Sandy was allegedly seen with Tabish at a Beverly Hills hotel just the weekend before Binion died.
Also the day before Ted died, he telephoned his lawyer, Jim Brown, who was handling his estate, and he instructed Brown to cut Sandy out of his will.
Just one day after Ted Binion was reported dead, sheriff's deputies in Pahrump, Nevada, 60 miles west of Las Vegas, made a startling discovery. It was the middle of the night, and Rick Tabish was loading a truck on Binion's property.
What are you guys doing out here? Nothing. You're just moving a little dirt. Moving a little dirt? Yeah.
But along with just a little dirt was a lot of silver.
Just a load of dirt, huh?
Several tons of silver in coins, ingots, and solid silver bricks. Silver, valued at roughly $4 million.
This was silver that Ted himself had buried and hired some friends to build an underground vault and put it in there.
Only a few people knew the exact location of the silver vault. One of those people was Rick Tabish.
I put the vault in for Ted Binion. He told me if anything ever happened to him, I was to take this, turn it into cash, and put it in a trust fund for his daughter, Bonnie.
Really? Why don't we put the cuffs on these 3 guys and get them out of here?
Nye County Sheriff's deputies didn't buy his story.
I think that Rick Tabish is either one of the bigger victims of circumstance or he's got some explaining to do. And people who know him and people who don't care for him now wonder about his motivations for sure.
News leaks, not to mention rumors and gossip, convinced the Binion family to hire private investigator Tom Dillard. Dillard discovered that Sandy Murphy took a phone call from Rick Tabish just 8 minutes before she called 911 to report Ted Binion's death.
Based upon my experience and based upon the interviews I've conducted, I personally believe that Ted Binion's death was a homicide.
6 months after Ted Binion's death, the coroner ruled that it was not an accidental overdose, nor was it suicide. He believes that the fatal dose was most likely administered by someone other than Ted Binion. The death was reclassified as a homicide. Sandy Murphy and Rick Tabish were arrested and charged with the murder of Ted Binion. The prosecution presented medical testimony that Binion was actually suffocated. But for some, the most persuasive evidence was this videotape. It features Sandy Murphy taken one day after Ted Binion died.
This is my personal property. It was a gift. But I'll leave it so that Jimmy doesn't throw a tantrum.
And she is hardly a grieving widow in this videotape. She is narcissistic, she is possessive, she is angry, she is unpleasant.
We're taking this for certainty because this is too valuable to leave in the house.
No, you're not.
Okay, leave it. Just take it video of it. Make sure you count the pieces. There's 2 pieces here and 2 pieces here.
You see a cold, steely, self-centered woman who is concerned with nothing but her own possessions. The video played a strong role in characterizing for this jury exactly who Sandra Murphy was.
Sandra Murphy and Rick Tabish were convicted of murder, burglary, and grand larceny. They were both sentenced to life in prison. Update. At a second trial, they were both convicted only on the robbery charges. Murphy was sentenced to 1 to 5 years, but was released for time already served. Tabish, who was already serving time for unrelated crimes, received up to 10 years. He served his time and has been released. Next, a fatal case of arson kills 6 firemen. Your tips help bring the case to a close. You may recall these dramatic scenes from a previous broadcast. Firefighters in Kansas City, Missouri volunteered to help us recreate an unsolved crime that left 6 of their brethren dead. At the time, pumpers 30 and 41 were called to a construction site where a trailer had been torched by arsonists. Firefighters have been told that there were explosives at the site, but they believe that they were safely stored in fire-resistant bunkers that were well away from the blaze.
Just the fact that the bunker was there, in fact, there was 2 bunkers there, led that captain to believe that's where the explosives was, and this trailer was just a regular, normal construction trailer with tools and equipment in it, and therefore there was no danger.
When the department supervisor arrived, he learned that there were, in fact, large quantities of explosives inside the trailer.
Let's get him out of there, John.
Pumper 41 or pumper 30, answer. Pumper 41 or pumper 30.
As the sun rose over the scene, the worst was confirmed. 6 firefighters were dead. This shocking crime triggered the biggest manhunt in the city's history. But after nearly 8 years, those responsible were still running free. Then, Kansas City firemen pushed aside their painful memories to help us get their story on the air. Update. The efforts of the Kansas City Fire Department paid off in a big way. More than 600 viewers contacted us here at Unsolved Mysteries, and their tips led directly to the indictment of 5 suspects. When the long-awaited news was announced at a press conference, the excitement was tempered by lingering emotions.
Even though it was very difficult for many of us who participated in that recreation of that event. It came at a time when many of our spirits were down, needs had been involved, and we needed a lift, and we got a lift.
All 5 suspects were found guilty on federal arson charges. They are George Frank Shepard, his brother Earl, their nephew Brian Shepard, Frank Shepard's girlfriend Darlene Edwards, and Richard W. Brown. At the trial, prosecutors said the fires had been set deliberately during an attempt to steal equipment and dynamite from the construction site. Each of these defendants is now serving a life sentence in prison. On a busy highway in Fishkill, New York. It started as a minor fender bender, hardly worth reporting.
You blind or something? Easy. Jeez, I don't freaking believe
I was in my own lane doing the speed limit. You apparently hit me.
What are you telling me?
Hey, just settle
First you
down.
run me off the highway, and now you pull this self-righteous crap? You piece of garbage.
Hey, you haven't got the right to talk to me like that. Let me see your license.
Yeah, you want to see my license?
Yes,
47-year-old Richard Adderson had been shot in the chest. What you are about to hear is his desperate plea for help.
State Police, Sawyer 911.
I did an ambulance when she shot.
What's your name, sir?
Richie Addison. I'm just shot. He pulled the gun and shot me. Please help me.
Okay, we have an ambulance on the way.
We had an accident. It deserved this. He pulled out a gun, shot me. Oh, please help me. He wore glasses.
I couldn't believe that he had been shot. You live in an area that you think is safe. We came from New York City. We moved north. I couldn't believe that something like that could happen here.
Richard Adderson, beloved father and husband, respected educator, died less than 1 hour after making his futile call to 911. It happened during rush hour on eastbound I-84 in Fishkill, New York, about 2 miles past the Newburgh Beacon Toll Plaza. Damage to the car indicates Richard was sideswiped by the other driver, and then both men pulled over to the shoulder.
I have never come across another crime that parallels this one. We're speaking here about a minor property damage automobile accident that escalates into an argument and results in the death of one of the individuals.
You want to see my license?
Yes,
I don't think we are dealing with it. I don't think that you can deal with this. My youngest son this morning told me when I came here, how long are you going to be? You have to be really careful in the car. Something could happen to you. Those are the fears that he has, because I'm his only parent that's left. My 2 older daughters can't even speak about this.
Richard Adderson's family still hopes the killer can be caught. Though no one saw the accident or the shooting, there were witnesses to the argument. The gunman was middle-aged, balding, and wore glasses. Richard added another detail. His assailant had a beard. The gunman drove a green 1997 Jeep Cherokee with New Hampshire plates. If you have any information that can help solve this case, please log on to our website at unsolved.com. Next, the dramatic account of a young pilot's mysterious close encounter.
It's not an aircraft.
And later, meet a man who spied for the CIA using psychic powers. Just south of Melbourne, Australia, a single-engine Cessna lifted off from Moorabbin Airport. The pilot was 20-year-old Frederick Valentik. Valentik had been flying for 2 years and logged over 150 hours of solo time. He was headed for King Island. His flight plan called for a 40-minute trip west along the Australian coast, and then at Cape Otway, he would head south for a half-hour run over Bass Strait.
It was a fairly normal exercise. He had an appropriate instrument rating for the trip. It was a very straightforward flight. And, I mean, I could see no reason why it shouldn't have been concluded successfully. What happened 3/4 of an hour into that flight, I think will be one of the great mysteries of Australian aviation.
Valentik was in contact with the Flight Service Center on the ground. The following recreation is based on the actual transcript of his exchange with the air traffic controller.
Delta Sierra Juliet, there seems to be a large aircraft below 5,000.
It is a large aircraft, confirm.
Is there any Air Force aircraft in this vicinity?
Delta Sierra Juliet, no known aircraft in the vicinity.
Delta Sierra Juliet, seems though he's playing some sort of game up here. He's travelling over at me at 2 and 3 times at speeds I cannot identify.
Delta Sierra Juliet.
As it passes by, it's a long shape.
He wasn't to the point where he was panicking, but he was genuinely concerned with what he saw. He was worried. He sounded confused. Then, as he described what the aircraft was doing...
This thing's just stationary.
You know, I became a little bit concerned too.
What I'm doing now is orbiting, and this thing's just orbiting on top of me.
It's got a green light, and it's sort of metallic.
It's just disappeared. Is this some sort of military aircraft or what?
Delta Sierra Juliet.
Is the aircraft still with you?
Delta Sierra Juliet, Ranger's just got it a rough idle.
I've got it set on 2324 and this thing's just coughing. Melvin, this strange aircraft's just hovering on top of me again. It's hovering and it's not an aircraft.
Suddenly, an unidentifiable clicking noise came over the radio. The sound lasted 17 seconds, then silence.
Delta Sierra Juliet, this is Melbourne.
For 4 days, a flotilla of search vessels crisscrossed Bass Strait. There was absolutely no sign of Valentik or his aircraft. There was no evidence to suggest there had even been a crash. All that remained was a final, baffling radio transmission.
It's hovering, and it's not an aircraft. These were Frederick Valentik's final haunting words. So what was it then? Well, people can only speculate until a witness came forward with a startling first-hand account.
Around the time of Valentik's disappearance, an eyewitness and his family were returning from an afternoon outing when they noticed unusual activity in the sky.
Hey, that's a plane.
I can see the plane. It's the green light above the plane, up there.
The witness has asked that we do not reveal his identity.
I looked up and I saw this line green light, about 1,000 to 2,000 feet above the aircraft. So we sat there and watched it for a few seconds, and the green light got closer to the plane. I said, that plane is coming down pretty steep. I said, on a 45-degree angle. I said, I think it's going to crash.
The eyewitness account suggested that perhaps Valentik had an encounter with a UFO. He never saw whether the plane crashed. The only certainty was that Valentik had vanished. 6 weeks later, an amateur photographer came forward with even more startling evidence. On the evening of the flight, Roy Manifold had been setting up to photograph a sunset at Cape Otway, almost directly under Valentik's flight path.
I'd done the normal thing, you know, I just had the camera on automatic exposure, and I took 6 photographs of the sun disappearing into the sea.
When developed, one of Manifold's photographs displayed a peculiar blemish.
I observed this mark on the print. It looks like a developing error or something, you know, they've mucked it up. And I said, just a minute, that was taken that night I took that sunset is exactly the night that this guy disappeared.
A leading Australian photo lab found neither dirt nor damage on the negative, determining that the strange mark was actually in the picture. The negative was later sent to the United States for computer analysis by a team of UFO researchers. They claim that the blot was actually a solid metallic object. To them, it appeared to be enveloped in a cloud of exhaust situated about a mile from the camera. A second analysis, however, stated that the mark could be a developing error. Either way, Roy Manifold believes the photograph does show something of consequence.
Unfortunately, I didn't see it, and I didn't hear anything that particular night either. First time I've had something on any of my printing, and I've done thousands of photographs, and without any incidents of anything like that on them.
Many years have passed since Frederick Valentik flew off to his uncertain fate. However, the questions raised by his mysterious disappearance are just as disturbing today.
This thing's just stationary.
What exactly did Valentik see in the minutes before his radio contact was lost? Perhaps the secret of Frederick Valentik does lie many fathoms beneath Bass Strait. Or perhaps it lies far from our planet, light years beyond our understanding. Next, workmen digging a pool unearthed clues to a mysterious disappearance, and the case is reopened. San Marino, California. While digging a swimming pool, a workman made a grim discovery. 3 plastic bags and a fiberglass box full of dismembered sections of a human skeleton.
We didn't really know who this person was, and we were later told by uniformed officers from San Marino that in 1985, the people that lived in that house had reported 2 people missing.
The 2 missing persons were John Sohus and his wife, Linda. They had once lived in that house with John's mother. Their sudden disappearance 10 years earlier had mystified everyone who knew them. Now, it appeared that either John or Linda, or both, may have been killed and buried in their own backyard. According to their friends, John and Linda felt trapped living with John's mother and looked forward to escaping to a place of their own.
Wow, that looks great.
John held several part-time computer programming jobs, and Linda was beginning to find success as an artist. Now in their late 20s, it appeared that the young couple had finally gotten the break they'd been hoping for. Linda announced that she and John had been asked to interview for important new jobs.
Linda called me and informed me that we have to go to New York. All she could tell me was that he's got a job with the government and they want us both.
Linda told Sue that the trip was scheduled to last 2 weeks, but Linda and John never returned. The mystery would deepen in the coming months.
Hi there. Hi. I'm gonna be gone for about 2 weeks.
Linda had ordered her 6 cats and paid in advance for the 2-week stay. But at the end of 8 weeks, she still had not claimed her pets. The kennel owner tracked down Linda's sister, Kathy.
You'll be good, I'll miss you.
I immediately thought that something was wrong. I feel that inside very strongly that Linda would not have left her animals behind.
Kathy telephoned John's mother, Dee Dee Sohus, hoping that maybe she had an explanation.
Hello. Is Linda back from her trip yet? I'm not supposed to tell you anything.
In several phone calls, Dee Dee kept insisting that John and Linda were on some sort of a secret mission.
Well, that's all I can tell you.
It did appear to me as though she had been drinking. Sometimes it depended on what time of the day you called as to how wild the story became.
Linda's family filed a missing persons report, and San Marino police started an investigation.
Ma'am, we have a missing persons report on John and Linda Sohus. Do you know where they are?
They're not missing. They're on a secret mission.
Can you tell us how we can reach them?
Dee Dee refused to identify the person that she called her source.
I keep telling them the same thing.
With no further evidence of foul play, the police were powerless to investigate further. Finally, a full 3 months after the Sohuses had supposedly left for New York, Linda's friend Sue received this picture postcard.
I have no clue as to how going to New York could ever wind up being France. I was just like, I can't wait. She's finally going to tell me where she is, what's going on. And I read the back of it, and all it said was, Dear Sue, kind of missed New York. Oops, but this can be lived with. John and Linda. It just didn't sound like her.
Then another card was sent from France to Linda's family.
My mother received a postcard from Linda. It did not say when she would return or how she had come to be in Paris. If they were planning a trip to Europe, she would have been very excited about going and would certainly have expressed that to my mother and perhaps myself as well.
I have a source.
3 months after refusing to help police, Dee Dee Sohus had a change of heart. She too filed a missing persons report on John and Linda.
John and Linda myself.
Have you had any contact at all since they left?
Well, I've been sending their mail through my source.
Dee Dee revealed that her source was actually the tenant in her guest house, a man who called himself Christopher Chichester. He'd lived there for the past 2 years, but suddenly moved out, leaving no forwarding address.
The man has been in contact.
Dee Dee also reported that her son's pickup truck was now missing, although she had no idea when it disappeared. There was, however, no proof that a crime had been committed, and therefore, the investigation stalled again.
If I think of anything else, I'll call you. Okay, please do. Thanks a lot.
Soon after filing her missing persons report, Dee Dee would sell her house and move to a trailer park.
Thanks a lot. You're welcome.
She died 2 years later, the fate of her son still a mystery. The case sprang to life again 9 months after Dee Dee died. The Sohus's truck turned up 3,000 miles away in Greenwich, Connecticut.
Well, this is it.
A man calling himself Christopher Crow tried to sell the pickup to the son of a local minister. Rather than buy the truck, the minister's son reported it to the police.
The Reverend's son decided not to purchase the vehicle based on the fact that there was an outstanding lien on the truck. My continued investigation ultimately ended in me discovering that Mr. Chichester and Mr. Crow were the same individuals.
Crow, Chichester, by any name, the ex-tenant seemed to be the one person who might be able to shed some light on the Sohus's disappearance. But he vanished again. The investigation stalled until the dismembered skeleton was discovered 5 years later. At that time, a forensic anthropologist examined the remains. He determined that they fit the physical description of John Sohus. A lack of dental records, however, prevented a conclusive identification. Police are still trying to figure out how the bones came to be buried in the Sohus's backyard.
Nothing about the bones themselves that say there was murder. There was no bullet holes. But the fact that the bones were buried in 3 separate plastic bags and the head in a separate bag makes one think that there was murder involved.
Detectives hope to learn more by using a chemical called luminol, which emits a distinctive glow when it comes in contact with blood. Luminol was applied to the cement floors in the guest house on the former Sohus property. Within moments, it would become apparent if there was evidence of a murder. The telltale glow was unmistakable.
Cat, what do you think about that?
Looks like it could be blood.
A whole lot of blood, Ron.
Although luminol can detect chemicals in other compounds, this was not just a trace element situation. There was a copious amount of something put on that floor. In our opinion, that was blood.
But whose blood? Was John Sohus murdered in the guest house and then buried in the backyard? And if so, what happened to Linda? Officially, both John and Linda are still missing. Authorities would like to speak to this man. They have since learned that his real name is Christian Gerhardstreiter, a native of Germany. Update. More than 20 years after John and Linda Sohus disappeared, a man calling himself Clark Rockefeller was identified as a person of interest in the investigation. Rockefeller was arrested in a parental abduction case. Fingerprints prove that he was, in fact, Christian Gerhardstreiter, alias Christian Chichester, the man who lived in the guest house next to John and Linda Sohus. There are new developments in this case. Here's one of our staff with details.
After further investigation, the Los Angeles County District Attorney recently filed charges against Christian Gerhardstreiter for the murder of John Sohus. Gerhardstreiter has denied any involvement in the case. However, he was convicted of the murder of John Sohus and sentenced to 27 years to life. No trace of Linda Sohus was ever found.
Next,
it's him.
See how one man's psychic powers made him a top-secret spy for the CIA. Fort Meade, Maryland. A nondescript wooden building may have been headquarters for a bizarre clandestine operation. It's hard to believe, but according to published reports, the CIA secretly studied people with psychic powers and then used them to spy on our enemies all over the world without ever leaving the base.
Keep your focus.
There's a great deal of emotion here.
It's called remote viewing.
Relax.
My God, it's him.
Remote viewing is the ability to witness distant events by using the psychic powers of the mind. Codenamed Stargate, it was a top-secret espionage program the government never wanted us to know about. And we wouldn't if it hadn't been for one man with a very unusual story.
David Morehouse was gung-ho military. His father and grandfather were career officers. He graduated from Brigham Young University at the top of his class and went straight into the Army. Morehouse quickly became a company commander with the Army's elite fighting unit, the Rangers. He and his company were on a desert training exercise when a freak accident occurred. A bullet lodged in Morehouse's helmet, knocking him out cold. It was then that he claims he experienced a vision of overwhelming power.
I had a messenger, or I could call it an angel or a spirit, that came to me during this time that I was knocked out. I had spent some 13 years of my life practicing the art and science of taking human life, and yet here I stood in the presence of something who said to me, very vividly I recall, said to me, the path you have chosen in life is the wrong path, and you are now to choose a path of peace. And then it was over.
But these sketches by Morehouse show that it wasn't over. He began having nightmares so horrifying that they drove him to an Army psychologist. The psychologist suspected the concussion had somehow released in Morehouse a latent psychic ability. His commanding officers invited Morehouse to join a secret CIA unit studying psychic powers. Working with a monitor, he learned to use biofeedback to control his brain waves and send his consciousness to the far points of the globe.
Hell, I don't know. I think it's a mountain.
During David's first session, his supervisor concealed a photograph of Mount Fuji, the target site, in an envelope.
I missed it, didn't I?
My first target was Mount Fuji. I was shocked. In that instant, I had gone to Mount Fuji and was describing what I saw, smelled, heard, and felt at that location.
Over the next year, David Morehouse worked with 7 other remote viewers at Operation Stargate, steadily refining his psychic talents. One of his most difficult assignments came when a Marine lieutenant colonel named William Higgins was taken hostage in Beirut by a group of Shiite Muslims while working with a United Nations peacekeeping group.
My God, it's him.
Are you certain?
Of course I am. This is Colonel Higgins.
Morehouse and the other remote viewers were desperate to find Higgins, and they began a marathon series of psychic sessions.
He's not doing well. He looks worse.
Even though we could see him being moved, and we could describe his surroundings in the room, and the beatings, and his physical conditioning, and his emotional condition, we still could not, or were not ever able to provide an address that would allow a rescue team to go in and effect a hostage rescue.
He's gonna die. I can taste it.
Morehouse claims that the remote viewers physically sensed Higgins' death a year and a half into his captivity. Just a few days later, the kidnappers confirmed that Colonel Higgins had been murdered. Another major challenge for the remote viewing unit came when Pan Am Flight 103 exploded over Lockerbie, Scotland. All 259 people aboard and 11 more on the ground were killed. Hours later, with the cause of the crash still unknown, the remote viewers were called into an emergency session. They were not given any details. They were only given a set of coordinates.
The encrypted coordinates are 1875, 2938.
For us, remote viewers, it was a tremendous emotional toll to us to watch that catastrophic event take place and to see the confusion of these souls that were instantly there. As everything that was physical about them plummeted to earth, their souls remained there in this ethereal state.
Oh my God!
Within a day of the crash, Morehouse and the other viewers had pieced together a scenario. They believed Flight 103 was blown up by a terrorist bomb hidden inside a suitcase in the forward cargo hold. After 2 months of detailed investigation, the FBI and the Scottish police came to that exact conclusion. At Fort Meade, Morehouse continued his remote viewing, but he was becoming disillusioned.
We were starting to develop the protocols to be able to access the mind of another human being for the purpose of destruction or death. And that is when I finally drew the line and said, I cannot any longer be a part of this. I can't see this tremendous gift turned into a very powerful and tremendous and very elusive dark weapon, which is what we were going to do with it.
David Morehouse decided to go public. When the government threatened a court-martial, he resigned his Army commission. He eventually wrote a book, Psychic Warrior. Since then, the CIA has admitted the existence of Operation Stargate. In the wake of the negative publicity, the program lost its congressional support and was shut down. How great are the untapped powers of the human mind? Can remote viewing really be used to reveal the secrets of the past, the present, or even the future? If you believe David Morehouse, the potential is real. If you have any information about any of the cases on this program, please log on to our website at unsolved.com.